episode of Car Stories with
Sung Kang
and Emelia Hartford. It is so great that we both planned to match today.
Oh, yeah. Look at that. Military day.
Yeah, Sung and I are both wearing green pants and a white shirt.
What is your favorite pizza in the world?
Favorite pizza?
Yeah, pizza place.
If I were to tell you about a pizza place I've had recently, it's Mulberry Pizza. Mulberry or Prime are usually my two go-tos.
The one in LA?
Uh-huh.
Mulberry, LA.
Mhm.
Oh,
What about you?
Domino's Pizza.
You like Domino's?
I think Domino's is the best pizza in the world.
Really?
Yeah. It is.
We'll have to agree to disagree. Don't get me wrong, Domino's is good, but I think I might just like a little...
People underestimate the power of a franchise.
It's good.
It's not good.
But that's like saying Starbucks coffee's good.
It's good. It's great.
It is good, but it's...
The Big Mac is the best tasting hamburger in the world.
Okay.
It's served over 3 billion people probably by now. Right?
I wish I could agree with this.
Emelia, if there was no McDonald's,
yes.
Okay? If there was no McDonald's, no Domino's, and no KFC.
Right.
And you came over to my house,
mm-hmm.
and I put a Domino's pizza in front of you.
It'd be too much for me.
No. Okay, and I give you a slice of that. And
I wasn't talking about like too much food. It'd just be like
what? Too
much everything. Like
a cheese pizza?
It's like overdone. I like simple.
Okay, if you came over to my house and there's no McDonald's, and I put a Big Mac in front of you, okay?
I don't think
and you have no McDonald's does not exist. In this Twilight Zone, there is no McDonald's. And I made a McDonald's Big Mac for you. You would say this is the best that...
It's processed. It's not real. I can't get behind this.
It's because you know.
And I don't know. I don't think maybe I'm jaded, but I know based on recently in Japan when I went to Starbucks, I got a matcha latte, and then I came back to the States and I got a matcha latte, and it tasted completely different. And it was so much better in Japan.
That's not my point. That's not my point. There is no Starbucks.
But I'd much rather go support a mom and pop place.
Sure.
And I feel like the food and drink tastes better there.
If mom and pop opened a hamburger spot.
The only one you could convince me on is Taco Bell.
What? No. Ugh, that's dog food. That's gross. No. Okay, how about KFC argument? If you
I haven't had it in so long.
Okay, well, for the chicken people out there, if I made a KFC original recipe at my house, people would think that was the best chicken ever made.
I feel like I can tell a difference between fresh ingredients versus non-fresh, frozen, preservative ingredients.
Well, okay, if I made the same recipe with fresh organic chicken from Whole Food or Erewhon, it would be the best chicken. That's why...
It would be great because it wouldn't upset my stomach.
Well, that's why there's a KFC, because at one time, it was a mom and pop. At one time, McDonald's was a mom and pop.
Yeah, but you can't compare. We're talking about the food today. You can't compare it to what it was.
Man, this is... Anyway, my vote is Domino's Pizza, the best pizza. And you say Mulberry. Okay.
Oh, I know Mulberry's the best. I'm just saying that's what I go to in LA. Yeah, that or Prime.
I guess I can't convince you that Domino's. Anyway, so speaking of... awesome things, right?
I just feel like I X'd myself out of working with so many potential brands on this podcast.
No, you didn't. No. What, like Domino's?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Well, yeah. Hey, Domino's. I love you guys. Right. Anyway, speaking of awesomeness, our first guest today,
yes, is Jen Horsey, and I am just amazed and constantly impressed with Jen, from being a racing driver, from a journalist, to being the first female analyst on ESPN.
She's about, giving back and paying forward, and creating opportunities for other people's dreams to happen. And she thrives in that. That's what she feels like her superpower is. And it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Anyone in this industry knows who Jen is. She is a rock and doesn't usually take the spotlight, is usually the one helping others behind the scenes. So it's really nice for her to come on and just get to know her on a more public scale.
Yeah. And I hear that she can make some mean pastries. Yeah.
I want a croissant, Jen, please.
Yeah. So without further ado,
Jen Horsey.
So Jen, thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks, guys. I'm super happy to be here. I kind of know you from different worlds, so it was cool to get the invitation and be able to join your great podcast.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you coming on. I feel like we like to have people on who inspire us, and if someone were to look at your resume, they'd be like, holy crap, this is possible in a lifetime, and you did what, and you've done how much, that I don't even know where to begin. I kind of want people to hear, who are listening, from you a little bit about yourself and how you got to where today before we kind of dive into everything. How did this all start for you?
So I don't have like a straight path. I didn't, when I was a little kid, I didn't grow up in a car household. I didn't follow racing. I didn't know anything about cars at all. I wanted to be a journalist from a really young age. I was like, I'm just curious about people. I'm curious about what makes people tick, and also recognize that you could go and do a lot of cool stuff. And I wanted to be in it. I didn't want to be watching things from a distance. I didn't want to be sitting behind a desk. I wanted to be in it. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a journalist. So of course I went to theater school because that's practical. And I have a technical theater degree.
You do?
Yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, I did lighting design. That was my expertise.
Dude, I'm telling you, she could tell me anything and I can't be surprised.
Wow.
So, but partly because I knew that would be fun. I loved the theater environment. I thought I would meet really interesting people, which I did.
Yeah.
Where'd you grow up?
Toronto. So I'm originally from Toronto. I went to school on the East Coast in Halifax at Dalhousie University. And while I was in school, I was like promoting bands on the side and then also being a freelance writer and working in campus radio and my student paper. And I was kind of going to do the experiential path. I'm not super into school. So I think everyone should go to school. I think degrees are great. It's not my favorite environment. So I thought, okay, well, I'll do the school because I have to get the piece of paper, but I'm going to get a lot of experience. So I went through and did the experiential route to becoming a journalist, got an internship at Canadian Press, which is Canada's Associated Press. It's the wire service, which turned into a full-time job. So my first career was a journalist. So just
First career.
Yes, just to date myself completely, my first big story was 9/11.
Oh, wow.
So I was a junior reporter at that time. News is obviously 24/7. The Wire in particular, it's sort of like that for everyone now because of the internet. But again, this is like early 2000s. The internet played a really different role in our lives. So news is 24/7. And I soon realized I was never seeing my friends and family. I was a junior reporter. So I worked a lot of nights. I worked a lot of weekends. And I learned quickly that as long as there was something in the slot beside your name on the assignment board, they just skipped and went to the next one, and you could just do whatever you wrote in the slot. If you chose your own destiny and just followed your interest, you could choose what you wanted to do that day. So because I was working a lot of evenings and weekends, I used to assign myself on the weekends to things that I thought would be interesting, that I didn't have any experience in.
That's smart.
And that, potentially I could bring my friends and family too. So at least I
Right.
would see them because I wasn't seeing them. So one weekend I assigned myself to a rally. I did not know the difference
Just
between
randomly.
a car rally and a, political rally. Like I knew that this was car racing. I knew nothing about it, literally nothing. So I went to the stage rally. It was the Canadian season ender, championship to be decided, high stakes, everyone going super fast. And that particular race is called the Rally of the Tall Pines. It's one of North America's most notorious, I now know, difficult, late night, grueling races. I know of people who have injured themselves pretty seriously just hitting a jump wrong. And it's known as winter ditches or winter roads with summer ditches, which is to say the conditions can be very icy, but there's no snow to catch you if you fall off the road. So it's a pretty gnarly race. I went out, I was standing in the woods and I watched this red Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution come careening around a corner, flat out sideways, past inches from me at a 45-degree angle to the road direction. And I was like, wait, that guy's doing that on purpose. Like, you can slide a car sideways on purpose and not crash. And I was hooked. I was like, I got to figure out how to do that. Like, I wasn't hooked like, I need to watch this more. I was like, I need to know how to do that. Like, I want to be able to go sideways on purpose. So this is where it gets a little bit ridiculous. We had to go to the banquet afterwards, sitting at the banquet table, and there's like 12 people around a table. And the table is, 7-time Canadian rally champion, shop that builds all the best cars, guy that won the race, couple friends and family, 55-year-old man sitting to my left and his wife. And I did not know there was such a thing as a privateer in racing. I didn't know you could just race. You could just be in a car race. So I was like, okay, I get all this, and looked around the rest of the table. But Mr. Man beside me, whose name was Keith, how did you get here? And he's like, my wife and I, we've been racing for the last 4 or 5 years. It's been super fun. Really enjoyed it. But I think we're going to sell the car and put the money into the boat. And I was like, well, how much is a race car? How much does that cost? He gave me a number. Turns out it wasn't very big. And I said, well, I'll buy it. And that's the day I became a race car driver.
Actually, after seeing this car go sideways through the woods, you're like, I love this. I want more. I'm going to buy a car and I'm going to learn how to rally race.
Yeah. So I went from, pretty, fun and amazing career interviewing. I've interviewed Bill Clinton. I talked to Nelson Mandela, world leaders, Garth Brooks one day, world leaders and crime and politics and all sorts of things. Amazing, but also felt like I'd kind of done it. And then I had this opportunity to do this wild thing on the weekends. So I bought a race car, which, P.S., I don't necessarily recommend, as you guys probably are also aware. And I started racing. So I was a race car driver for a little while.
Did you have naturally a lot of talent? Yeah, I was going to ask. Were you
No, I'm terrible. I'm a terrible race car driver. I've also tested to do some stunt driving, and I can kind of do it because I can slide a car sideways. I'm better than a regular sort of civilian driver. But no, I'm a terrible race car driver. But as it turned out, I also don't have the car sickness gene. So although I was a terrible driver, the experience that I got behind the wheel showed me that I actually could probably be a pretty good navigator. So in stage rally, there's a driver and a co-driver. The co-driver is more a navigational role. No. I do not get car sick. And I had some opportunities because I was still working as a journalist. I had some opportunities to do some competition and kind of cover it from inside the car as for features for magazines. I pitched some stories that would be fun and learned that I actually was a pretty good navigator. So I competed for fun in regionals in the middle of the back of the pack. I wasn't last, but I certainly wasn't going to win. And became a relatively successful co-driver. But also I'm kind of scrappy. So I parlayed my media skill into working with the US Rally Series, doing online media coverage and helping them with their PR and helping them with their marketing. Did the same thing with the race team I ended up driving for and co-driving for. And that's kind of how I fell into this car world. I did not imagine that my life would take that significant and a left turn at the banquet of my first race. Mm-hmm. But that's how I got into cars. And I've been doing car stuff now since the early 2000s, and met a lot of fantastic people along the way and heard a lot of great stories along the way. And that's what drew me to it in the first place anyway. Sure, 45-degree angle sideways to the road, amazing. But what makes everybody tick was what always fascinated me. And I love that I've had the opportunity to be part of this community for so long.
Have you ever been rally racing, Sung?
No, I've never raced. Been in cars, but I've never raced.
Do you get car sick in cars?
No, it puts me to sleep.
Really?
Oh,
No.
yeah. Then would you like to be a co-driver? Because you are biologically equipped to do that.
Wow.
Are you a nervous passenger?
No, I start
Oh
falling
my God,
asleep.
I'm all the opposite.
Yeah, most race car drivers are terrible passengers.
I don't passenger well, and I will puke. I get so nauseous in a car if I'm not the one in control. And sometimes, honestly, when I'm driving too, if the helmet's too tight on me or something, I start feeling a little woozy. But really, passenger, if I'm in the back seat especially, I'm done. It's game over.
I always tell people, they're like, well, how do you be a navigator? Because it's, race car driving is expensive if you're a privateer, right? You got to pay for your car and your mechanics and your entry fees and all that stuff before you figure out the sponsorship deal. Co-drivers often get paid, especially good ones. Mm-hmm. So even as kind of an amateur, you're not paying for anything. You can at least go to the races for free or maybe half the entry fee. Usually you get a discount, certainly a discount over being a driver. And people are like, well, how can you be a co-driver? I'm like, okay, well, when you were a kid, were you the kid lying with your head in the footwell, upside down, reading comic books, chewing on really sweet gum, and like smelling all the gas fumes and just kind of feeling fine about all that? If so, then yes, you can be a co-driver. If you've ever once in your life been car sick,
I'm screwed.
don't try.
I get
Don't
sick
try.
in airplanes.
Yeah, no, you are
get
not
sick
a
in
co-driver.
Sorry?
You get sick in airplanes?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I get nauseous. I have to be in control.
The best sleep
There's
I get
something there.
is when the plane's taking off.
Uh-huh.
And as soon as it lifts off, 99% of the
You're
time,
out?
I pass out.
I usually sleep on planes too.
Right.
Maybe it's part of the like anti-car sickness gene.
Can't do
It
it.
feels so good.
Can't
It's
do
like,
it. I'm up.
boom, and I'm like out. And then I wake up when they're like serving food or something, right? So it's I look forward to flying, and I look forward to like taking ride-alongs with like race car drivers and drifters because it's so relaxing. It's
That's
super
so funny to
relaxing.
hear.
I can think of some people who would like to have you in their right seat, for sure.
Yeah, but I'm horrible with directions, so I don't think I'd be a good navigator.
It's not really directions. It's a whole language.
Is
so
it?
yeah. It's really different. I actually can get lost pretty easily if I'm not paying attention.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a very different skill set. You can. Yeah, it's a very different skill set. I don't know how
people
to
who
describe it.
don't know what it's like to passenger in a rally car, what does navigating look like?
So navigating does not look to the navigator like a race at all. Navigating looks like reading a book. In a top prepared US or international race car, the co-driver can't necessarily even see over the dashboard because obviously for weight balance, you guys know cars, the co-driver is kind of a piece of equipment and the co-driver should be down as far as they can and back as far as they can. So barely seeing over the dashboard is pretty normal. I'm tall enough that I can usually see, but just barely. And the language of stage rally is the turns are coded in numbers. And so it's like a left 1 would be a hairpin turn and a left 3 would be a 90-degree left turn. And it's depending on what system you use, it's a numeric scale from 1 to 6 typically. And unlike in desert racing where it's kind of they're telling you about gotchas, in stage rally co-driving, they have everything in the book. So it's a constant stream of the co-driver just talking, 100, which would be like 100 yards, 100, left 4 tightens and opens, right 6, left 6, 300. Like you're just constantly. And so as I'm saying that, people who compete in rally, I'm painting a road. The idea is that the driver can drive ahead of their eyes. And it can be safer because if I say left 3 over crest, that's a 90-degree turn over the top of that hill that you can't see over. So you should probably have the wheel cocked to the left before you get to the top of that hill. If, on the other hand, I say flat over crest, pin it and go straight, like get as much air as you can. So, but
God,
as
that
I
sounds
say,
so fun.
it is pretty fun. And I got to ride in really fast race cars doing amazing things for a number of years. It was really fun.
Yeah.
And when it's working and you have a good vibe with the driver, it's you're like sharing a brain. So it's this very cool, like you feel like as a co-driver, I have a really clear mental image in my head of the road that we're on. And my eyes are flickering up a little bit and I'm looking at the tree line to see if it's bending the way that I expect it to be bending very occasionally, and mostly kind of doing the gyrometer that's in my body and understanding where I am on the course. And it is amazing fun. And when it clicks, it really is like you're one person. It's very cool. And you're one with the car.
What characteristics makes a great like symbiotic like co-driving and driving relationship?
Well, I heard the act of being a co-driver is described once as doing calculus in a hurricane. If you feel like you can figure that out, you're in a good position.
Boats, that's another one. Can't do it.
Definitely not me. I'm opposite of the stereotype. It's like I can barely count my fingers.
You should be my co-driver.
No, I cannot do math.
Well, you don't actually have to do math.
Or
You just
calculus.
have to focus.
Oh, and even that, I have like ADD, so it's like, and I'll fall asleep on you. We will die. We will die.
I'll co-drive you. It's okay. But yeah, you definitely need to test as a co-driver.
Were you the first ever female to report on ESPN in that space?
Yeah, in the end. So I started out as a researcher. Again, I just follow my heart, right? So I started out as a researcher. I would be sitting in the booth. So if you think about how a motorsport show works, usually there's like a play-by-play person, and then there's an analyst person. And the analyst person is typically an ex-competitor. And the play-by-play person, that's like a whole skill set of being able to call the action. At X Games, because the sport was so new, there wasn't an analyst person. There wasn't an experienced person. So they brought in a number of people who know a lot about racing, but not a lot about that particular sport because it was kind of a niche sport at the time. And so I was assisting them, and I would sort of be handing from, like, when they weren't on camera, I'd be handing them like note cards with like, you should say this now. This is what's happening with that car. Like, that car's debeated a tire, like whatever it is. A couple years in, I took a year out to compete. We front flipped very spectacularly. We were highlight reel footage for a really long time. That was actually great. I got a video game out of it. Super fun. Then I was brought back as an in-car reporter. So it was head-to-head racing. They didn't really need co-drivers, so they hired 2 co-drivers to effectively co-drive the audience. So we were mic'd live to air as reporters in the race cars as they raced head-to-head. And then eventually they asked me to sit in the booth as an analyst. So as an ex-competitor, most knowledgeable about the sport, to provide context. And I believe I was the first female motorsport analyst. So I like predate Danica Patrick by a little while. That's the role that she plays on the IndyCar broadcast. So I was the first to do that. And I did that for a number of years, both on ABC and on NBC, which was super fun. And then I've switched back into more of a producer role because I'm actually uncomfortable in the spotlight. Like, I'm sitting here in the spotlight of your studio. I am much more comfortable behind the scenes supporting people than I am being in the spotlight. So I'm more comfortable in the co-driver seat than I am as a driver. I'm more comfortable as a manager than I am the person sitting on the stage, right? So I challenged myself to do that TV for a number of years, but it's not a natural place for me.
Have you always been such an unmotivated person? And I say that jokingly.
It just, I think if you're chasing the thing that interests you, and I tend to be like singularly passionate about a thing. I tend to get a little bit obsessive about a thing and be like, I need to know everything about that. I want to do that. I think that you're motivated because it sort of becomes your raison d'etre, for better or for worse. And ultimately, with sort of the clients that I have now and what I'm doing, so I work mostly in motorsport marketing and communications. What actually inspires me every day is that there are people who are really good at the thing that they do as race car drivers, as builders, as key figures in the community. They're really good at that. That does not mean they're good at marketing. That does not mean they're good at communications. It doesn't mean that they have the time or the inclination or the interest in doing it. And what I love to see is those people who are incredibly good at a thing have the chance to do it. So what inspires me is giving those people the funding, the time, the space to really shine and show what they're capable of. And so that's what motivates me. Like, and how are you not an ambitious, motivated person when you get an opportunity to support amazing things happening in the world?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful that it's so selfless. It's amazing that most of the time we see the people in front of the camera, but it takes people like you to really be able, to fan the flames as well.
Even with all the skill sets in the world, if you have a thing that you're really passionate about, like, why waste your time on other stuff? Right? Like, Steph is great at marketing. He can do all kinds of things, but wouldn't it be great if he just had hours in the day to work in the shop? Like, how amazing is that? How much better is that output? How much more satisfying is that for him? How much better are all our days? And so, yeah, exactly. Being part of it and supporting it and watching sort of genius come to fruition, that's really satisfying.
And also I was listening to a conversation you had. And one thing that I took away from it already was I think it was an anecdote about you teaching somebody how to drive manual. And the first thing you teach them is how to fail. like how to stall, right? And when you start from there, then you can build on that. And to me, I was like, wow, that is amazing insight. That's just so smart, and it's like so insightful. And it's something that I would have never came up with. And it's this like natural ability to teach, And I wonder, like, where do you get that from?
That is a question I don't know the answer to. I mean, I've always been an observer, right? I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to observe and see things and translate them into a thing, capture the moment, capture the essence of the thing, communicate those things out. So am I a teacher? Am I a communicator? Maybe I'm a communicator. It may be about storytelling around the thing. And certainly with teaching somebody to drive stick, yeah, absolutely. You should stall a car. Like, don't be afraid of that or you're never going to learn. So you do have to learn how to overcome failure. And it's a pretty small failure, I think, especially, and this is maybe a little bit about having been an outsider to the automotive world when I joined it. I learned to drive stick in my 20s. I didn't grow up in car culture. So as a young woman at the time, I was afraid of a lot of stuff of cars. And the first time I was sitting with a race car driver in the right seat showing me how to drive, he's like, so you've seen in the movies, every time you hit a curb, the car flips over 6 times and bursts into flame. You know that's not actually what happens. We're going to crash today and it's going to be okay. I was like, okay, that's cool. And I think especially with young women, especially the way young women are conditioned to really succeed, I think there are some differences in the socialization with young boys and young women, young girls.
What do you mean by that? Can you?
Well, I think girls, the way that we play as children and we collaborate together, and also the way that we perform in school. I think our performance, we're really expected to be perfect. I think there's a perfectionist tendency that girls are socialized around that is less prevalent among boys. I think boys, the definition of success for young boys can be different than academic success or perfection or, you're so pretty, you're so smart for girls, right? Like I think there's a judgment thing where the boys have a little more flexibility. And so I think that teaches young women, young girls, as they become young women, to fear failure a little bit. And with cars especially, you're going to fail. You're not going to learn unless you fail. So when you're at the racetrack, I found it really foreign when I first started going to the racetrack. All the guys are like lined up on the fence, watching the guys on the track, like fling their cars around before they go out for their session. And for me, it was really interesting to learn how collaborative it was and that there wasn't really a lot of judgment. Like they were just watching, they were just participating. And I think as girls, you feel a little bit more pressure to succeed, and a little bit more pressure to be perfect. I don't think there's as much experimentation, and I think you feel like it's judgment even when it isn't.
Yeah. No, I'd really, this is like hitting me deep. Like I resonate so much with this. And honestly, I don't feel like, I'm so happy that there's so many women that there are today compared to what there were 10 years ago. I still don't feel like there's enough. And these are conversations that, being a female in the space, you don't get to openly have a lot of. And just hearing you say, like, the fear of failure and how that is kind of a very prevalent thing and it's not really talked about as much, like, really hits home for me too, just hearing this. And you're a lot better at putting feelings and thoughts into words than what I am at doing. Just to explain what this is, what it's like.
I mean, it's a different experience that women have, right? One of the reasons I was uncomfortable in the public eye, I was a little uncomfortable on television. I came up sort of at the dawn of social media too, and I started building a social media following, and then I backed off because it's a different experience online.
Well, you're more scrutinized too.
Absolutely.
And you're expected to know more. And if a guy doesn't know, it's okay, whatever, who cares? But if a girl doesn't know, it's like, wait, she doesn't know that? You don't know that? Like,
I think there's kind of an assumption that you're not meant to be there as a woman.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to like almost overcompensate. And to a degree, that's just society, right? Like these people, there aren't people, there's a lot of hate on social media. And I think a woman's experience on social media and a woman's experience in the public eye is a really different experience than a guy's experience. Yes, everyone is scrutinized. I think women get a lot more hate and various other inappropriate interactions, right? And I just didn't want to do that. Like I don't have the time or space in my brain to be dealing with that every day. And I have every respect for those of you who are succeeding in that space and able to turn that off, because it's a lot. And I heard you say on the podcast before, you have to work twice as hard for half the respect. And I think that's really true.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is changing. And again, it's kind of just society. And the example I have is, so I was a first female analyst in motorsport, right? Like not on ESPN, but in motorsport at all. In the US, certainly. Who knows about the rest of the world? And so we were at a race, and I went to go check out my position, right? There's 2 seats. They got microphones in front of them and a board and whatever. So I went to go check out my position and get a feel for how I was going to see and interpret the track for the audience during a practice session. Very normal. I go up. It's on like the roof of another structure at the racetrack. And there's a sound guy, and he's tinkering around trying to get stuff working. And I sit down in my seat, and he's like, well, you can't sit there. And I was like, why not? He's like, well, that's for the analyst, right? And hey, you know what? Like, ouch. And my co-host was there, and he was like, that is the analyst? And he was like, oh my God, I'm sorry, right? But the base assumption is that I don't belong there, and that a woman couldn't possibly, but also, yeah, of course not. I was the only one.
Yeah.
Very fair assumption on his part. So yes, I think there is a different experience that men and women have. I don't think a lot of it is like a deliberate sexism.
No, I don't think so either. I think there just hasn't been a figure in that space for people to know that it's possible.
Absolutely.
And I do see that shifting.
Absolutely. The more and more women that there are. I've started working with Amanda Sorensen, who is, she has a pretty robust social following, and she plays in a lot of different motorsport realms. And it's actually really great working with her, because she doesn't anticipate some of the backlash that I do. But my mindset's a little older, right? Like, so I'm expecting more resistance, and she just doesn't expect it to be there. And
That's
it's not,
amazing.
Which is great. Like, how much have things changed in 20 years?
Because I think I still have a little bit of that expecting backlash.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of like, you're between our ages, right?
Yeah,
and your experience is a little different time as well. And so I think it is changing. I think it's changing really fast. And there are now a ton of women in motorsport paddocks.
Yeah.
Maybe not all driving, and it would be great to see more women driving. But
I
again,
think in due time,
that's changing too, right? Like it used to be a kid, even with parents who are race car drivers, the boy in the family would be like, yeah, you can be a race car driver. And the girl in the family would be like, you should be a doctor, or whatever it is. And I think now it's like, well, you guys should both race. And if you're both good at karting, like, sure, let's put you in race cars. And that just wouldn't have, a generation ago, that wouldn't have been the assumption.
Right.
I'm staying really quiet on this. And I'm so happy you guys are having this conversation. I'm so happy you're here, Emelia, to be able to talk to Jen, to share this to all the female listeners out there. Prior to this conversation, if I didn't have this conversation last night with them, I would go, no, I think you guys could do this and you can do this. But the female experience is something that I will never understand. And when you articulate it that way, is that there's a whole set of problems and societal boundaries or expectations that women have that men will never understand. It's like, it actually is very clear to me now. And it's just beautiful that you guys are able to share. And also, like, it does sound positive that it's changing and getting better.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's just, sometimes you don't know something is possible, you're even able to do it until you see someone else do it. And that's the cool thing, that I really feel like social media and the internet helped expedite that process, because there was such seeing other people do things was a lot more tangible.
I mean, I would not be here without Michelle Mouton. I met her once. I was just like, I couldn't even talk.
Can you share who this person is, Michelle?
So Michelle Mouton was a World Rally Championship driver. She must have been the first, or certainly the most well-known for Audi.
I think she has a few first victories, a few first things. I don't want to misspeak on exactly
what's her
what
era. How old was
80s,
she?
Group B.
Yeah.
In
the 80s.
Yeah, okay. And she was rad.
It was the Audi Quattro.
Yeah,
in the Group
Audi
B series,
Quattro.
right? Yeah.
She did Pikes Peak.
She was fast.
And I talked to her. I met her.
I want to meet her so badly.
She's amazing. And I remember meeting her. She was staying beside a friend's brother. And I kind of knew my friend's brother, and they were talking, and I was just like, I don't care about celebrity normally, right? Like, people are people, and people are awesome, and I want to share their experiences and hear their experiences. And part of this, maybe just having been a journalist, nobody's ever been behind a barrier for me. So, but there's this woman, and I'm like, oh my God, that's Michelle.
I would have fanned out.
I
don't think I've ever fanned out before.
No, I fanned out hard. I couldn't talk. I tried to approach her several times. Like, literally, she's standing at the side of a racetrack like any other person that's standing at the side of a racetrack watching stuff happen. And finally I was like, oh my God, you're such an inspiration, the dumbest, like, how many, like, what do you say? Finally, what I do say is meet your idols for sure, because we talked for a little while and I was like, you are really an inspiration. It sounds cheesy.
Was she cool? Did it mean, because they say don't meet your heroes.
No, definitely do.
Okay.
Like, definitely do. And we talked about it, and talking about being a role model. And I think she's very aware that she is a role model. But I was like, it was just so great because you're like super competitive. And she's like, yeah, because I never wanted to be fast for a girl. I was just fast.
Ugh, I say the same thing.
Right?
Like, when I've never played the female card for being the fastest female C8 Corvette, I just wanted to be the fastest, period.
The car doesn't know.
Yeah, the car doesn't know what gender you are. The car really doesn't give a fuck. Sorry, but like, yeah.
Yeah, so she was amazing to meet. Still inspired by her. So it's super important to have role models. And it's weird at this stage of my career where I kind of realize, I guess I am a role model to
it's
some
a weird thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I get told that for myself. And I'm like, I don't understand how, because I don't think I had so much of that when I was younger in this space. And then I found it as I grew older. But it's like a weird thing to think that, you are a role model.
I think just being present and being and doing and following your heart and being open, and like, I will always, if anybody asks for help, I will always try and help.
Yeah.
Like, you pass it forward, right? Again, it's a small industry. Everybody, I think sometimes you talk to people and they think the world is a zero-sum game. There's like 5 resources and everybody's fighting over those same 5 resources. And if somebody gets one of the resources, then there's only 4 left.
Yeah.
And that's not how I see the world. I
totally
think
agree
that there is enough for everybody. And if there's a really great opportunity, new resources will be made to service that opportunity. Or, if there is new genius in the world, there will be a space for it.
Right.
So support everybody's work, everybody's projects.
Life is not a zero-sum game. There may be competitions in racing, but life isn't a competition. Everyone's on their own path, and that's okay. And some people's happen quicker than yours, but you're on a path for a reason, and it really is no competition. I sincerely believe that. And I love cheering other people on, because if someone else is doing great, you're going to do great too. It's just how it works.
I'm just like so impressed with both of you. And today I'm like extra proud that we get to do this podcast, because
honestly, same.
Like, I've always yearned for mentors in my life, and both of you, right, are just, for whoever's listening, it's like, male or female, I feel like they're just, you guys are just wonderful, like, teachers. To be able to listen to you, Jen, right, and talking about stuff within the automobile industry or the racing industry, and to be able to use that as a takeaway, because I needed that, because I have a habit, I think many of us do, but I'm trying to work on it, is not to compare myself to other people.
I think everyone struggles with that.
Yeah.
It's hard not to.
Of course. And especially in this town, right? Like, you're driving down the street and you see billboards and you're not on them, right?
I don't know how you guys do it. I don't, like, the whole Hollywood thing. Like, I don't know how you audition and get that many no's. Like, I can't. I mean, it's good. And one of the jobs I had when I was in college was telemarketing, which was amazing, because
you get a lot of no's for telemarketing.
Oh my gosh.
What do you mean?
It taught me a lot about
I'm
taking
sure you
no.
get a few more choice words than just no, even.
Oh yeah, I interrupted a lot of stuff. I don't know why people answer the phone when they're having sex, but sometimes they do.
You touched on it earlier, but I don't feel like we've talked enough about the fact that, and I'm going to butcher it, I don't know entirely, you founded Rallycross.
Yeah, so there was a small founding group of 3 or 4 of us who put rallycross in the U.S. together.
What is that for people who don't know?
So rallycross it's a motorsport. Currently, it's nitrocross. Travis Pastrana is the face of the new imagining of American rallycross. It's rally-style cars. They've diverged quite a lot now, but originally it was rally-style cars racing door-to-door on a closed course. So the thing about stage rally, if you're not familiar with the stage rally, if you want to go watch a stage rally, you have to figure out where it is. Then you have to get a map of the stage rally. And then you have to find a place to intersect the road where the cars are going to be racing. And then you have to stand on the side of the road in whatever inclement weather nature is throwing at you that day with your thermos of coffee and watch cars come by in 1-minute intervals. It's amazing on television. It's an adventure in person. Not everybody's cup of tea in person. Rallycross is kind of the answer to that. So it is these rally-style cars, which are capable of going very fast in a straight line and also amazing, hairy, sideways, angled slides, racing door to door. So you also don't have to do the math to figure out who's going faster than who because they're racing. They all start at the same time. But it all happens in 5 laps. It's super fast, short heats, really exciting.
Indoors.
Outdoors, but on a track.
On a track.
I had the pleasure of going to one of the recent races, and it was it was windy and no one cared.
Yeah.
And when I say windy, I was wondering.
You were at Glen Helen. It was real windy.
It was real windy, but
I know from
fun.
windy
no
which
one
one you were
cared.
at.
It was a great time.
Super fun to watch, really engaging.
If people want to go watch a race, where do they go to look up the schedule?
So it's called Nitrocross now, and it's nitrocrossracing.com.
For people who don't know Travis Pastrana, it's Pastrana, not Pastrami, right?
Pastrana.
It depends.
Pastrana.
If you have autocorrect, then
it's
definitely
pastrami.
It's pastrami. But
That's how I remember his name. I'm like, it's pastrami, right?
Definitely Microsoft Word thinks it's pastrami. I have had to correct that out of press releases multiple times.
But if you YouTube him, he's doing what Ken Block is doing for Hoonigan, right? Like he's a crazy driving.
Amazing innovator. He started racing motocross. He started racing on 2 wheels.
Oh.
He was the first guy ever to do a double backflip on a motorcycle.
Yeah.
I think that was like
Crazy.
06 or 07.
Right.
He's just like he jumped out of an airplane without a parachute.
So that's all.
He's been
like
around a
just-
long time.
Okay,
Yep.
all right.
What's next for you then? You're kind of in that boat, open to figure it out, make the time for new things to come in type thing?
Yeah, I mean, I've worked with Papadakis Racing since 2010. I continue to do that. I work with Ryan Turk. I work with Frederick Osbo. I'm working with Amanda Sorensen, not with Papadakis Racing. I need to correct that because she's also in the Formula Drift paddock, but I don't have anything to do with her FD team. That's more of a influencer. What is she doing with the other parts of her career? So I've sort of taken a step back to refocusing on driving, on the drivers, and their social properties. And so there's a lot of opportunity for me to flex my creative chops as well as marketing and sponsorship sales. So those are the things I'm focusing on right now, doing a little bit of stuff with Grid Life as well, which is another super fun property.
Yeah.
I love Grid Life. Have you gone to a Grid Life yet?
No, what is that?
It's a music and motorsport festival. So they have drifting. They have Grid Life Touring Cup, which is short, like 15 minutes touring car racing.
They have everything from drifting,
and
road
time
racing.
attack. Those are the three main disciplines.
Where have I been?
I mean,
under a rock, literally.
It's very passion oriented. As I say, music and motorsport festival. There are 5 stops this year. The closest one to us is Laguna, and it'll be at Laguna in the fall. The big one is Midwest at Gingerman, but it's largely amateur racing. So, I mean, you say you've never been a race car driver. Here is your chance.
Here's the chance.
So you get a car from Emelia. You guys get
Suit
together.
up, co-driver.
There you go. And it's time attack, so you can
I can't
run.
race. I can't do it.
Yeah, but time attack is different. It's not wheel to wheel.
It's not that. It's because I have compulsive disorder.
So you'll just yank the wheel one way?
I'll quit everything and go want to be a race car driver.
Welcome to being a race car
That's why
driver.
I don't have
mean,
Well, that's why I can't. Hobbies don't work for me, like golf. I can't.
You
play
get too
golf.
competitive?
Yeah, because I'm so competitive.
yeah, I'm the same. I literally at my first race, I bought a race car.
Yeah.
It's a path.
No, well, it's a path that I shouldn't go on because it's gonna go nowhere. It's gonna just make me broke, right, and homeless eventually. I need to feed this dog. Well, for the young folks, I'm sure there's questions out there. And you said that you mentioned like you came from traditional, like print right? Journalism. And now there's this like influencer, right? Person. What sets certain influencers apart? As a race car driver, as an influencer, what does one need to be aware of, and what can one like work on to become successful?
Geez, Emelia, it feels like you're the person to answer that
I
question.
think you're great. Are you kidding me?
Objectively, objectively.
I think
Yeah.
you have an eye for talent, so you're the right person to answer this question.
Oh dear. Well, that's very kind. I think a willingness to learn and a willingness to grow. So I'm going to give away a secret here. So now, if I ever hand you 3 juggling bean bags, you'll know what I'm doing. With race car drivers or with people that I'm interested in kind of working with, there's a little test I sometimes do, and I will bring out 3 juggling bean bags. I'm not a very good juggler, but I can juggle. And it looks easy when you know how to do it, right? So I'm juggling or whatever, and I'll hand them the bean bags and see what they do. And if they really try and they fail, because it's a lot harder than it looks when you're first learning. It's not actually that hard, but it is when you don't know what to do. It's hard. It's like, solving a Rubik's Cube or something. It's just the thing you know how to do or not. If that person tries and drops the bean bags and then says, no, wait, show me again, and then drops the bean bags again, and then continues to try, that's a person I want to work with. They're willing to grow. They're willing to learn. They're willing to fail. If they try once, fail, and then smash them down in frustration, that's not a person I will work with.
People have done that?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and it's just, it just shows something kind of fundamental about their character. Do they want to grow? Like, they may want to on paper grow, but they aren't willing to go through the uncomfortable moment of not being good at something. And I'm actually this is again why, I'm do what I say, not what I do. Like, I'm more inclined to like smash the thing down and be like, I suck at this. I don't want to do it anymore. And I don't want to work with those people. That's something I actively work on with myself, is like being open to not being perfect at things. So I think it's about, again, it's just like a willingness to learn and being open to growing.
That's a characteristic that she has.
Aw.
That she does.
Thank you.
Like, it really is. There was this moment where I was like, I caught that. And I was like, she's always willing to challenge herself, even within criticism, and like learn from it and become better. And walking away from that, you're like, wow, those are characteristics of a winner. And it's okay to fall. It's okay to, fail, to drop the beanbag, right? But it's your willingness to like, put the embarrassment and the ego to the side and go, let me try to figure this out. And sometimes maybe you never figure it out, but you're still grinding. It's one step forward. And it's like, it's almost so simple, but that's something that I can take, and I still can apply today, because it's, from, what we do in Hollywood, it's like every day, like you were saying, it's like, it's a no. Every day I'm too handsome for that role.
A problem we wish we all had.
Dang it. Every day.
Celebrities are so relatable, aren't they?
But every day it's a no. There's a no from something, right? And it's like, and I think I'm gonna borrow that. It's like, there's another beanbag I dropped. Like, get up and start juggling, and maybe I'll never figure it out, but at least I'm able to, like, to try to juggle, right? And that's something. And also something that it really resonated. And I was like, you were talking about gratitude, to be able to step back and go, dude, I'm just like grateful to be here. It's like something that I have to keep reminding myself every day, is like to go, oh, look at my wife, look at my dog, look, I have health, having the headlights on bright, and that's something that, I relate with, and like, I was like, God, that's awesome that Jen also believes that.
I wish I knew it when I was 20. Comparison is the thief of joy. We talked about that earlier. When I was younger, it was like, I got to do this. I got to do this thing. I'm not where I should be. I'm late. I didn't take a journalism degree. So now I'm doing this intern thing, and I'm like in my mid-20s. I'm doing an internship. What am I thinking? And just to pause and reflect on where I'm at. And realize how awesome things can be. I mean, it's not always perfect, and sometimes things are really terrible. Sometimes you pause and reflect and you're like, yep, today sucks. But that's when you drop the beanbag and you're like, okay, I got to pick it up and try again, but maybe not till tomorrow. I'm just going to take a little minute for me. But yeah, practicing gratitude, deliberately and consciously practicing gratitude is something that I brought into my life in the last few years. And I think it's, there's a little bit of a cheesy pop psychology moment for that, but also that is where the joy lives. The joy is in realizing and understanding what you have. And it doesn't need to be what somebody else has. We talked earlier about being on our own paths, right? I wake up in the morning. I'm so lucky. I live a block away from the beach. I have a ridiculous giant dog who has all the joy in the world. Every time he sees the water, I get to go and watch sunrise with him every morning as he splashes around in the water. Like, what a great situation that is. I grew up in Toronto. I own palm trees now. My house has palm trees on it. I don't have to deal with sleet and snow in the morning. So yeah, gratitude is, it's key, I think, to happiness.
Yeah. So simple.
So hard though at the same time.
So hard.
Yeah.
And that's where like social media is like, I start noticing like I get super like mentally like disturbed.
It's exhausting,
Yeah.
right?
But it's like a necessary evil too. I mean, it's like you can't avoid it. I think you got to master it, right?
I think you have to be deliberate about it. Like, I think the worst thing ever is doom scrolling, right? Somebody sends
Doom
you
scrolling? What's
Doom
that?
scrolling, you
You
haven't
just-
heard of that? Where you just scroll for hours on end.
You
You
just
just
sit
get
there
in
and
a
let the
hole.
algorithm feed you whatever it's feeding you.
Yeah.
Doom scrolling. Whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a if you're really tired and you just only find energy in being able to, it's a dark place.
Yeah. And
And-
I mean, it does incite comparison. So I actually have a TikTok account that's for my dog that basically only has like fuzzy puppies on it. Like, basically the algorithm understands that account is for fuzzy, cute puppies. And so that's how I deal with doom scrolling. I'm like, I'm going to go look at my happy algorithm.
Wow.
I have forced myself this year. I made a resolution that I was only going to try to go on social media if I was looking for inspiration or was planning to post. I'm trying not to allow myself to scroll. And if I want to scroll, this isn't an ad. I go on Duolingo and I learn another language. And that's my form of, all right, I don't feel like reading a book. I don't feel like doing my emails or turning a wrench right now. I'm just gonna play Duolingo. So then at least I'm learning something too.
Yeah, I replaced my like social media folder on the front page of my phone with the New York Times. I play the games on the New York Times to sort of fill the like random scrolling. I play Wordle.
Yeah.
Because again, like obviously I'm 100 years old because I play Wordle and do connections in the morning. And actually yesterday I was at lunch with a friend and I can't remember what he called it, but during lunch, I renamed my social media folder to Poison.
Wait, that's a good idea.
Right?
Poison.
I think his was like toxic sludge or something. And like, don't get me wrong, social has tremendous value, but I think you should be deliberate about it. I should choose to go watch Emelia's feed, right?
Mhm.
I should choose to be inspired by you in a day, not let the algorithm just like feed me things. all day.
Right.
I run to social media when I start feeling insecure.
It's the worst thing to do.
Yeah, it's apt because
Isn't that weird?
So if I find my screen time is too high and I'm like, man, I need to get out of this headspace of scrolling and do something else, I turn off the color on my phone.
it's a good
So
idea.
then
Turn off the color?
Yeah, so then it's just black and white because you find the things that attract you on social media. It's because it's bright, it's all these colors, it's very like,
Such a science behind
you
this.
just turn off the colors on your phone and it's black and white and you're like, oh, this is boring. And you
It's
don't
an
scroll.
accessibility setting.
Yeah.
One of my pet peeves is you're at lunch with somebody, right? And they are on their phone. I can't even be their friends. I put them in a different category if all of a sudden someone's talking to you and they pick up their phone and they're like this. And then I've seen it where we're having an intimate conversation, like the three of us, and one fool's on Instagram.
Dude, just wait till everyone's wearing the goggles. You'll never know
Right?
who's doing what.
That's crazy. That's crazy. And I call him on it and I'm like, yo, we drove all the way over here to spend time with each other. You know how rare this might be like one of 10 meetings left as friends, and you're on Instagram,
Yeah.
like scrolling strangers. Like, I don't understand it. And you realize it's an addiction.
Yeah.
Right?
It totally is an addiction. I just had this conversation with a friend yesterday. I have to do more stuff, right? The pandemic, 2020 and 21, part of 22 was dire, right? I was inside my house. I opened a bootleg bakery.
I am so bummed that I wasn't able to go get some of those chocolate croissants or the almond croissants. One of the croissants,
I'll
it was the
make you some.
She opened up a bakery at her own house during.
You opened a bakery
during COVID time. It was kind of like I was obsessed with your stories. Obsessed. When we were talking with Ed about the sourdough bread.
Yeah.
I was talking about her, about how she made like. You had okay. I still need to try these croissants.
I will make you some croissants. I promise I'll make you some croissants.
Yeah, she had a whole bakery business during COVID.
Did?
Well, okay,
and it was contactless for everyone listening.
Well, I had a job. Like, I was working for an energy drink company. I took this job expecting to be like going to events and promoting events and working with athletes and doing all this exciting stuff, and I was stuck at home by myself on Zoom calls for 8 hours a day, just losing my soul. And so I, because I'm basic, I started making sourdough bread because that's what you do, because I have nothing else to do. I'm documenting it all on social media. But really what I want more than anything in the world is a chocolate croissant. And the pandemic is like 2 months in, and I haven't had a chocolate croissant because everything's closed and bakeries are closed and you can't go to a cafe and get one. And I don't even eat chocolate croissants that often. It's like a twice yearly thing, but I need one because it's my comfort food. So I started learning how to make them and documenting it on social media.
I was living for these stories.
On these like Instagram
This is why
stories.
I knew about sourdough bread and the process when we were talking with Ed.
And then as it turns out, you can't eat. I mean, I ended up buying flour in 50-pound bags. Like, it became, as I say, I follow my passions and kind of serially. And so the baking became a bit of a passion and it broke up my week, but you can't eat. I mean, that's a lot of pastry. Yeah. And I'm vaguely gluten intolerant, so I shouldn't eat any of them. But I just really enjoyed the process. And so then I started selling them on Sunday mornings. I lived in the Venice canals in a little tiny apartment that backed out onto the canals. And, it was the pandemic. People were walking around outside. So I started just like masking up and selling my wares. So on Sundays, I basically had this bootleg bakery where I would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, prepare pastries. People would be lined up by 9:30. It was so stressful. I'd be like trying in my tiny apartment oven, trying to get any heat into these pastries. And then I would be sold out within an hour. And it was very funny because it ended up being this kind of weird, have you heard about the lady that makes the pastries? And people would line up. It became a thing during the pandemic. And then I did the other basic thing that one does during the pandemic, as it turns out, and I got a dog. And he weighs 150 pounds, and his head is counter height, and he really likes pastries. So that ended my baking career.
I was wondering what happened.
Yeah.
Steve ended it.
Steve the dog started enjoying the pastries a little. It's very hard to bake when you have a 150-pound dog who really wants what you've got working on the counter. However, I can occasionally. So come to an FD event, maybe Long Beach, and I will get you some pastries.
Or maybe, Vegas might be too much to travel with them. We'll figure out more.
I mean, if you're coming to Vegas, I can make some pastries.
Okay.
My mouth is watering. Like, it's like Jen's chocolate croissants. It has a great ring to it with Steve as the mascot.
Dude, you just just look at a photo of these puppies.
Yeah, wow. What a constructive way to pass the pandemic. Are we okay with time?
We're getting the cue to wrap it up. Thank you so much for taking the time and coming on this podcast. And we could have talked forever. I've thoroughly enjoyed this, and I would love for down the line, maybe season 2, you come back on and join us. This was amazing.
Maybe teach us how to make some chocolate croissants. Yeah, we'll bring an oven and we'll just do that. But thank you. It was a gift and a true honor to get to know you better. And just thank you for being you. You're just awesome. Awesome.
You guys, thank you so much. I really enjoyed chatting with you today about our crazy wide range of topics, and I will bring croissants next time, for sure.
Please.
Thank you.